Hello guys, this is Avrath and a warm welcome back to my channel. Before we begin today's video, I just want to tell you that I'm currently working on a PvP video that will focus on gameplay and different tactics. And I'm also farming a lot to find the new essences because I really want to highlight them and to give you my impression and which builds that are viable going forward. Unfortunately, I have been farming quite hard, but I haven't been able to find the essences that I want yet, so this will be for an upcoming video. But since the last time I uploaded, I've actually done some changes to my build. I've changed my reforge, and I've also been able to find some new items. I have also tried to figure out ways to refine my tactics when I go to the training dummy. Because what I think is really fun is to do science and do minor tweaks, change something in the build, but maybe also change something in how you play in order to up the damage further. And I've actually been able to even further improve my best results. And before beginning, I would also like to say that, like a disclaimer, that I know that the build that is optimal when you go to the training dummy is maybe not optimal in other types of content. And you know what? I think that is fine. I think it's fun to see how far I can go. It's like if you think about the top speed of a very fast car. I mean, you will probably not go that fast when you're out driving it, but it's still nice to figure it out and how to improve it more and more. So that's the whole point of me going to the training dummy and having some fun. So anyways, without further ado, let us begin. So as you can see here, I've been focusing on two types of dummy runs. I've been focusing on 10-second dummy run, and I've been focusing on 1-minute dummy run. And when you go to the dummy and try out your damage, of course, you can come up with different rules about how it should be done. But the only rule that I have set for myself is that I'm gonna go to the dummy and it's gonna be solo, at least for this video. So you can't have anyone in your party. And then you have to tweak anything to try to get as high damage number as possible over 10 seconds or 1 minute. So that is the idea, okay? And I know that I have already uploaded a video about a very strong sustained damage build. So if you haven't seen it already, I recommend you to watch it again. And this build is actually the strongest I have tried out when it comes to maximizing the damage, actually both for 10 seconds and for 1 minute. But what I have done since I uploaded that video is that I have changed the tactics I use in order to achieve the best result. And I've also been able to find some new items and done some minor tweaks, as I told you before. And what I also want to do in this video is that I want to do a very detailed breakdown on what my build consists of. So we will look on each item separately and we will study them to see, okay, what gems do I have equipped in that specific item? What are the stats I have on that item? The reforges, the magical attributes, etc., etc. So let me show you the timeline of this video. First of all, I'm just going to show you real quick which skills I'm going to be using. After that, we will look at all the legendary items and we will look at them in detail to see exactly what my build consists of. We will do the same for the set items. We will take a look at all the bonus effects I get from my Warband. We will also look very briefly on what stats I have from Legacy of the Heradrim as well. Just so that you have the full picture about what my character looks like. Because of course you can replicate anything that I show you here, so that's a good thing that I show you in detail. But I also recommend you to watch my other video on damage, and I call it the Ultimate DPS Guide. In there I actually explain all the logic behind how damage works and how you can calculate your damage output. And going forward, it's easier for yourself when you're gonna theory craft and make builds and make informed decision if you have the knowledge you need to do so. So I highly recommend you to watch that video if you haven't watched it yet. And finally, we're also gonna watch some gameplay. I'm gonna go through some tactics with you, how you should do it, and then we're gonna watch a video together on my run. And I can tell you that I only tried it a few times, so I didn't manage to maybe do it 100% optimized yet, but I have a fairly good idea in my head about how it should be done, and I'm gonna explain that to you in the end of this video. So in front of us we have the skills that I'm using, and if we start by looking at the primary skills, I have actually included both of them, because if I want to do an optimized 10-second run, I use the Soulfire because I need the ultimate ready when I do it. But if I do a 1-minute run, I use the Bone Spear because over 1 minute, I know that I have said that it's very close in a previous video, but after even more testing, it feels like I perform slightly better over 1 minute with Bone Spear compared to Soulfire. But it's very close, and it might even be an even match. But I have to say that it takes some more time to set up a run using Soulfire, because you need to get the ultimate ready and things like this. And it's a little bit easier to work with Bone Spear because you don't need ultimate. So that's why I prefer it, since I don't really feel a huge difference between the two skills over 1 minute. But the other 4 skills I'm using, they're fairly straightforward. It's a summoner build, of course, so I'm using Command Golem, I'm using Command Skeletons, the Skeletal Mage, and the Bone Wall. And we're gonna discuss in the next segment here about which essences I'm using to affect these skills. So let us move forward. First, we're gonna look at my helmet. But before we do that, I want to remind you that I have already made a video about this build where I explain the theories and the choices made when it comes to build composition. So I will not dive too deep into that. In this video I want to do a stat breakdown so you see what each item looks like, and when it comes to magical attributes and normal attributes and reforges, etc, etc. So we're gonna not be as detailed when it comes to the theory about the build, and more focus on the stats themselves. So let's continue. On this build I have Fortitude, Willpower and Intelligence. I have critical hit chance increased by 4% and critical hit damage increased by 4.5%. Let me put on the pointer here so you can also see where I look. I would say that this is the best combination of normal attributes and magical attributes. Vitality is a good stat for survivability. And of course, if you survive more, you will you do more damage when you're alive rather than when you're dead, compared to when you are dead. This video is about how to maximize the damage at the training dummy. So for this content, this is the best combination. I have Bloody Reach at rank 10 in the helmet slot. Bloody Reach increases the damage I do to the enemy the further away I'm standing from it, and it actually affects my summons as well, so it's a very strong gem. It's also upgraded with some gem resonance effects, so I get 3% primary attack damage and 2% skill damage from that effect. Primary attack damage actually increases the damage of my summons as well, so it's very good for a necromancer. Skill damage has a minor effect on some summon damage, but yeah, I mean, it's positive because it has a minor effect, but it's not as important as primary attack damage. This helmet increases the duration of the mages by 39%, which is very important. And also the awakened effect increases the cooldown reduction on the mages, which is also vital for this build to work as intended. I use the vexed effect, and the helmet has the cursed properties, so this is also important. And I've actually done some changes to my Reforged setup since when I previously showed what I was using before. And what I've switched out is damage done to enemies below 30% HP and damage done to demons. None of these Reforgers actually affects the damage of my summons, but I had included them earlier in my build because I thought that if I'm going to change to a different class, it will be good to have these Reforgers to optimize the damage in Gauntlet, for example. But I have been thinking some more, and I realized that I'm a necromancer at heart, so I should actually work on optimizing the necromancer setup as much as possible. So therefore I switched in duration of beneficial effects and skill damage. Skill damage is not super important, so I could actually go for damage taken by my summons decreased instead. But yeah, I made this choice. I go all in on damage, and my philosophy is that if you're playing well and if you're in a very strong and competent team, you will be able to survive even if you have gone all in on the damage. This is as speaking as a DPS role player, but if you're a support player, of course, then you should maybe make different choices and not go for as much damage as possible. And yeah, that's what I have to say about my new Reforged setup. A last improvement I can do to this item is that it's actually from Inferno 2. So if I would be able to find a similar helmet in Inferno 3, it would upgrade the base damage of the item a little bit. So that's something I can work on to improve even further when it comes to the helmet slot. So now we're at the chest slot, and here I use the Essence Bloodless Hierophant. It turns my bone wall into a buff that increases the damage me and my summons make by 40%. So it's a very, very strong buff. So yeah, very good essence. And if we look on the stats, it has vitality and intelligence, and it has beneficial effect duration increased by 7.5%. So the only downside with this item is actually that it has vitality instead of fortitude, but other than that, it's almost perfect. What I could do is that I could maybe, yeah, it's not the perfect roll on the Reforged yet, so I have to get 0.5% more damage on the skill damage. So, but other than that, it's almost perfect. Slotted in this in the legendary gem slot here, I have the Mother's Lament, which increases the critical hit chance by 32% for 6 seconds every 20 seconds. And this effect is also prolonged by duration of beneficial effects. So that's why I want to have as much of it as possible, because the Mother's Lament effect is very strong. And the beneficial effect duration is not only affecting Mother's Lament, it affects a lot of other, all types of beneficial effects on your character. So very important. Yeah, you can also see that the gem is awakened, so it gives the bone wall a cooldown reduction of 10%, which helps me to keep the bone wall buff up 100% of the time. Without this cooldown reduction, it would actually not be up 100% of the time. So yeah, that's what I have to say about the chest piece. Let's move forward. On my shoulders, I use executive discontent. I've been trying out different types of builds with different types of shoulders, but in the end, this one is working the best. I don't really know why, because usually buffs work like this, that you can't have two buffs active at the same time. If you are affected by two buffs at the same time, only the strongest one will count. And I thought that, okay, the bone wall gives 40% buff, and this will give a maximum of 38% buff. So probably, this effect will not do anything. But for some reason, it seems like some buffs are still adding up on top of each other somehow. So this shoulder has worked best. I used the Echoing Shade. It's at rank 8, so this slot is not awakened. But at the same time, the awakened effect on executive discontent is increased life on your mages, which is good for some types of content, but not for the training dummy. So that's why I chose to put the Echoing Shade in the shoulder slot, because it's not important to awaken it. We have already gone through the reforges, so we don't have to do it again. But one thing that I could work on when we look at this item is that it's from Inferno 2. So I could find a similar shoulder from Inferno 3, and it would increase my damage a little bit. I would also change Vitality for Willpower if I could, because that would prolong some of the harmful effects on the target dummy. But Willpower is not super important. It's just it would have a minor effect. So let's look at the legs. And as we can see again, I have Fortitude and Intelligence, and beneficial effect duration increased by 7.5%. This is actually a very good item. It's from Inferno 3. The only problem with it is that it doesn't have a cursed effect on it. So that the more cursed effects I have on items, it's easier to choose the ones with the least bad negative cursed properties. So in this build that I'm using now with the current setup, I only have 7 pieces with cursed effect on it, and not the legs. So it's a small negative detail about the legs here. I use the Pain Clasp legendary gem. It's a very strong gem, so whenever an enemy is suffering from continuous damage, you will add 24% more damage to that enemy. And this is at rank 10. And it's in the leg slot, so it's awakened here, and you can also see the awakened effect, that it decreases the cooldown of Bone Wall. And the effect of the essence itself is that it increases the duration of the Bone Wall. So when we add all of these cooldown reduction effects and these duration effects, we end up having a Bone Wall that is up 100% of the time, like I said earlier. I could also improve the reforges just a little bit on this item, but they're almost perfect. So now we can look on the first main hand. It's from Inferno 3, so that's a good thing. I use the Pleasant Venom, which gives me a Poison Golem, which is a very strong golem, because it actually puts a debuff on the target, and it also puts a dot on the target that triggers Pain Clasp. So very, very good choice for this build. As you can see here, it has Fortitude, Willpower, and Intelligence, which is the best combination when it comes to this type of content. If we look at the magical attributes, it has damage done to demons, but increased by 6%. This has no effect whatsoever on the dummy, so yeah, it doesn't matter. I have primary attack damage 6% and critical hit chance increased by 3%. This is this is not perfect rolls, but it's still very good. Primary attack damage increase is almost as good as critical hit damage increased in my opinion. So yeah, it's almost perfect. You have the vexed effect again. We have talked about it already, and we have the same reforgers. I could work a little bit on them here, but they're almost perfect on this item as well. So if we look on the first offhand, I used the prong, and the prong decreases the time it takes to raise a skeletal champion when it's dead. And this is actually very important to use in this build, because I'm gonna explain to you soon. I know that I have already talked about this build in another video, but I'm still gonna repeat once again why it's so important to use the prong in this build. But if you look on the item, it has fortitude, vitality and intelligence. It gives me critical hit chance and critical hit damage. And there is also a minor effect from item base damage increased by 3%. It's not the best roll. It could be 4% and instead of 3% on the critical hit chance, but still very good. In this, I'm using the Berserker's Eye, which increases all the damage I deal by 16%, and it also increases the critical hit chance by 2%. This is, according to me, the best 1-star gem in the game, and it's easy to include it in this build. I actually chose to include Berserker's Eye instead of Follower's Burden. Follower's Burden increases the damage I do by 18%, but critical hit chance is stronger than increased damage. So that's why I choose the Berserker's Eye. And also, one of the reasons Berserker's Eye is better than Follower's Burden is because the gem resonance effects are also affecting your damage. On the Follower's Burden, it affects your survivability. So, as you can see here, I have upgraded the gem resonance a little bit inside of this gem, and it gives me 3% primary attack damage increase. The reforges, they're good. They're not perfect. I could work a little bit on them, but they're still very good. And if we look on the only downside with this item, the main downside is that it's from Inferno 2 and not from Inferno 3. So this item slot is something I can improve a little bit. If we look on my second main hand, I use No Rest, No Peace, which increases the attack speed of both me and my summons whenever a skeleton dies. And this is one of the key pieces of this build. As if we look here on the stats, it has fortitude, vitality and intelligence, so almost perfect, except for vitality that I would switch for willpower if I could. I would say that the combination of magical attributes is the second best that I'm looking for. The best one is 4% critical hit chance and 4.5% critical hit damage. But this is still a very good roll, so a super nice item. I have Blood-Soaked Jade equipped into this slot. It's at rank 8, so the item is not awakened, but the awakened effect on this weapon is not important for the build. The same reforge as before. The only downside with this item is that it's from Inferno 2 and not from Inferno 3. So that's also something I could work on. But what you can see here is that it says transfer here. So I'm actually having a little bit of a tip for all of you. I already told you about it in my free to play guide, but maybe not all of you have watched it or listened carefully. So I'm going to repeat it here again. This item is actually from my Warband stash. and at first it was a wizard item. So what I did, I switched from necromancer to wizard, and then I equipped the weapon from the Warband stash, and then after 24 hours I switched back to necromancer. What happens then is that the wizard weapon gets returned to the Warband stash, and I have a new copy that I can use as a necromancer equipped. I could actually repeat this process and do this with many different items. So if you didn't know about this before, you can actually pick more than one item from the Warband stash if you use this trick. Yeah, so just a little side note there here for you to use if you want to. Yeah, and finally we are at the final piece. It's the Viscere Coffin Lid. It's a very, very strong essence, and it improves the strength of the mages. And yeah, what it basically does, it's like the mage is shooting like a Soulfire ultimate, and it's bonkers and super strong, and it's a star of the summoner build. And if we look on the stats here on the items, it's both fortitude and intelligence, so very good. It has critical hit chance increased by 5%. The problem with this item is that it's actually from Inferno 2. So yeah, I have not been able to find a better item in both in Inferno 2 or Inferno 3. So yeah, critical hit chance increased by 5% is decent, but it's not optimal. I used the Freedom and Devotion gem because it increases the duration of all of my summons by 24%, and this is very, very strong effect, especially in longer fights. And it also increases the damage of my summons a little bit. So yeah, it's a very strong gem. It's also awakened, the shield here, so it gives me this very important effect: skeletal mage cooldown decreased by 10%. So yeah, this is basically what this shield looks like. It's the vexed effect and the same reforges as on all the other items, almost maxed. So now we have gone through what each and every item looks like in order for you to understand all the tiny factors that builds up and to my total damage output. And this is only the factors from the legendary items. We will look at the set items as well in a little bit. But before we move on and talk about the set items, I know I have talked a little bit already in the video about the importance of cooldown reduction on your mages. And I've already explained this in the other video I made that highlights the build I'm using here. But I have to repeat it for you again, because if you want to copy this build using this video, it's important for you to understand why the cooldown reduction is so important, because otherwise it will not work as intended. So let me explain to you. You can have a total of 6 skeletons and skeletal mages altogether. So it's not possible to have 7 skeletal mages at the same time or 7 skeletons at the same time. The maximum number is 6. Okay? So the main idea of this build is that you will summon new mages that at one point will start killing off your skeletons. And when a skeleton dies, it will trigger the effect of your main hand called No Rest, No Peace. That increases the attack speed of both yourself and all of your summons. And in order for this to happen, each time you're summoning a new mage, there has to be perfect timing and a perfect balance of your cooldown reduction and how fast one of your dead skeletons will spawn again. So I'm going to explain to you how it works. First, if you have not summoned a single mage, your composition will look like this. You have 4 skeletons alive. And then when you summon the first mage, you will have 4 skeletons and 1 mage. When you summon your second mage, you will have 4 skeletons and 2 mages. And as if you remember, the maximum number of skeletons and mages that you could have at the same time is 6. So this actually means that we have reached our maximum. So the next time we are summoning a mage, one of the skeletons will actually die. So the composition will look like this after we summon the third mage. We will have 3 skeletons and we will have 3 mages. And this triggers the attack speed buff from the main hand, no rest, no peace. After some time, we will be able to summon another mage, and it will be the 4th mage. After this, another skeleton dies, and we have this composition. We have 2 skeletons and 4 mages. And when we summon the 4th mage, we once again trigger the effect of the main hand. But what happens next is that the first skeletal mage that we summoned up here will die. So then we will have 2 skeletons and we will have 3 mages. And here comes the secret why cooldown reduction is so important, and also why we're using the prong in this build. Because what we need to happen now is that we have to summon the 5th mage after a skeleton has spawned. And we have to summon it before the second mage dies in order to keep the attack speed buff cycle going. So if we wouldn't use the prong in this build, it would take too long for the skeleton to raise up again. And therefore we would not be able to trigger the attack speed buff with the 5th mage. And we also need the cooldown reduction on the mage to be as high as possible, or high enough, so that we can summon the mage before the second mage dies. And when we find this sweet spot, and with the current setup I'm using, I'm getting 4.5% cooldown reduction from a Bottled Hope. I get 10% cooldown reduction on the mages from the Awakened Helmet, and also from the Awakened Offhand, the Vishrace Coffin's Lid. So then I have a total of 24.5 cooldown reduction on the mages. And together with the prong, this is actually the perfect sweet spot to keep this cycle going for as long as I want. So whenever, after the 3rd mage that I summon, every mage I summon will trigger the attack speed from the no rest, no peace. So yes, this is why it's so important, and I just wanted to go through with you again so that you understand the build if you haven't watched my previous video on this topic. So let's move on and do a breakdown of my set items. First of all, I'm using the Shepherd's Call to Wolves. It's a very, very strong set for necromancers. It increases the summons, the damage of my summons by 15%. It increases my critical hit chance by 18%. And it also increases the attack speed by 60% for 12 seconds every 40 seconds. I've told you in previous videos, when it comes to damage output, this is the best option. I would not use 4 pieces of Shepherd and 2 pieces of Shalbaz. It's a good combination, and in some cases you will do more damage than that with that combo. But I'm fairly confident that if you play the game for 2 hours and then you would compare the 2 options, you will do more damage with the Shepherd's set compared to the other combination. Of course, I mean, in some types of content you have to adapt a little bit. If you're running dungeons, I've said this before, then you should use 2 pieces of Isitar and 4 pieces of Shepherd in some cases. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to just doing a lot of damage, nothing can beat this 6-piece combination of Shepherd. So let us look at the breakdown of the items, the set items. On the neck, I have Vitality and Intelligence. It's almost perfect. I would rather have Fortitude than Intelligence, but yeah, this is a very, very strong necklace. It gives me 10% damage done by my summons increased, and it also has 3 sockets, so almost a perfect roll of this item. Here we have the Shepherd and Mother ring and the Shepherd and Father ring. When I look for sockets, I prefer to have either a blue or a red socket. I mean, if you have enough blue sockets overall, maybe at some point the red will be stronger, but yeah, it depends on what your socket situation looks like. But anyways, we have both Vitality and Intelligence on the Mother ring, and 10% damage increased by my summons, so it's a very, very strong ring, except for the Vitality here. I would change it for Fortitude if I could. Here we have the Shepherd and Father. It doesn't have Intelligence at all. So yeah, this ring is a little bit... it's still a very good ring with its magical attribute, but I would prefer to have Intelligence on it. That would affect the base damage of my character a little bit. Yeah, I can just mention it. Each point in Intelligence will increase my damage by 0.3. My base damage, that is. So that's how it's calculated. If we look on my other pieces, we have the gloves here. It has damage done by your summons increased by 6%. And yeah, I mean, the best roll is 10%, but 6% is still very good. And what's important to note here is that the gloves is the only item, this only set item that gives base damage. So when it comes to the other set pieces, it's not super important that they are from Inferno 3. But if you want one set item from Inferno 3, it's the gloves. And I managed to find this one. It has Intelligence, it has 3 sockets, and it also has damage done by my summon. So it's not perfect, but it's still very, very good. If we look on the waist here, it has Fortitude and Intelligence, and it has beneficial effect duration increased by 7.5%. Very important. And I also have 3 slots here for Tourmalines that increases the damage. So a very, very good roll. It's the perfect roll on a waist. Only problem is that it's from Inferno 2. So the combat rating is a little bit lower. And also, yeah, I would have a little bit higher normal attributes here if it was a drop from Inferno 3. But it doesn't really matter as long as my combat rating is high enough. So a superb item. Very, very nice. If we look here on the feet here, I have both Fortitude and Intelligence, which is good. I have 6% beneficial effect duration, and I have 2 sockets. This item is okay. I use it because, yeah, I really want the beneficial effect duration, and it's also good that it has Intelligence. I could work a little bit harder to find a new pair in Inferno 3 that has the same composition as this waist here. I want it to have 7.5% beneficial effect duration. I want it to have 3 sockets, but still a good item. So it's working. It's working. So now we have gone through all of the items. I'm just gonna talk really fast about some other factors that affects the build. I wanted us to look really quick, just so you can see my current bonuses from the Ancestral Tableau. And here I also have an improvement I could make to my build. I've been talking about the Cursed effect, the Vexed properties. And that gives attack speed to my summons. I actually only need 6 pieces of cursed gear for the vexed effect to be as strong as possible. And if I would optimize this build, I would actually have to find 2 pieces with the right kind of invocation trigger on them as well. Because in the best of worlds, I can also trigger this damage increased by 15% for 6 seconds at the start of the run, in order to get a little bit of extra damage boost. But of course, to find the right combination of invocation triggers that also has the correct magical attributes, etc., etc., that's very, very difficult. But it's just interesting that even if you have almost perfected everything, there is always something more you can do, and some of them are easier and some of them takes more time and requires more patience. So yeah, this is just what I'm thinking about, how I could improve my results even further. Here we have the Warband bonuses. I used the attacker I used the attacker role, and I used the arsenal room that gives me a little bit of a damage done increased buff. And here you can also see the Warband remnants I use. I use the Color Brutus, which increases my damage by up to 10%. I use the Typhus that increases my damage by 6%. And then I use Liar's Pact, War Vase, and Coward's Rage, and Arrowhead of Precision. I'm not actually sure if all of these works with my summons. Because, for example, the legendary gem Cutthroat's Grin, that increases the critical hit chance whenever you're standing behind the target, that does not increase the critical hit chance of the summons. So I guess that the Liar's Pact here probably doesn't work as well. But the funny thing is that maybe I have to do some more science on this, but I'm quite sure that Color of Brutus is working on my summons, even though Fervent Fang, the legendary gem, is not, even though they have very similar effects. So yeah, I might be wrong here. Maybe Color of Brutus is not working on summons, but I think I have tried it out sometime, and if I remember it correctly, it does work. So yeah, but don't take me on my word there. I actually have another set with all the yellow remnants, where I also have this ring that gives extra critical hit damage whenever your critical hit chance is above 70%. And yeah, I could actually switch to that remnant set instead, because when my Mother's Lament is active, I'm actually above 70%. So it's possible that I could have done a little bit more damage using that remnant set. But yeah, it's minor. But this is what I used for the runs that I'm highlighting in this video. Yeah, we don't have to talk a lot about this. I just wanted to show you all the stats I get from the Heliquary, so that you have a full picture of my character. And also here we have all the bonuses I get from Legacy of the Horadrim. So yeah, we don't have to talk that much about it. But now we're going to come to a very fun part of this video, and we're going to talk about how to pull off this dummy run, and what the gameplay, the optimal strategy that is. So finally to the gameplay section of this video, and here I want to explain to you the optimal strategy with this build to get as high result as possible on the training dummy. And of course, I said it before, and I want to say it again, that I know that doing runs at the training dummy cannot be done the same way in many other situations in Diablo Immortal, and that the build that is perfect for for the training dummy, or this kind of strategy will not be able to use in a dungeon or in a raid. And yeah, sure, that's fine. But at the same time, I want to say that I do this because I think it's fun. And also, it's a little bit like if you think about a sports car and they try to always make the top speed higher and higher and higher. And even if you buy that car, you will almost never drive at top speed. And I look at the training dummy a little bit like that. Like, okay, in optimal circumstances, how much damage could I possibly be able to make? And this is what I'm trying to theorize around. Okay, so yeah, I mean, take everything here with a grain of salt. It's fun, and we just want to see how crazy we can go. Okay, so with that being said, I'm gonna explain to you like a walkthrough on how to do the run as perfect as possible. And after I've explained this, we're also gonna look at 2 runs, one 10-second run and one 1-minute run. And I have to say that I have not been able to pull off the optimal strategy in these videos. So yeah, there are still improvements to be made. But in theory, I have a clear picture about how it should be done in order to maximize the result. Okay, so here we go. If you're going for the 10-second run, you need to use Soulfire. And first I want you to recharge your ultimate. And after you have recharged your ultimate, you can do it on the training dummy. You have to activate your defensive stance. When we have done so, we can engage the training dummy. And we have to engage the training dummy with 1 primary attack to start the timer. You don't want Echoing Shade to trigger, because if you summon an Echoing Shade clone, it will trigger the Vexed effect. And you don't want it to trigger yet, because it has a 30-second cooldown and you need it to be available at the exact right time. So only do 1 primary attack. If that 1 primary attack happens to summon a clone that triggers Vexed effect, you should abort mission and redo it again. Okay? After you have attacked the dummy with 1 primary attack to start the timer, you should immediately at 1 second jump in with your skeletons. And when you do this, it will trigger the 6-piece shepherd and Mother's Lament almost instantly. So this is very important, because there is a 40-second cooldown on the shepherd effect, and it is a 20-second cooldown on the Mother's Lament effect. And if we're able to pull everything off perfectly, we want shepherd to be ready together with Mother's Lament at exactly exactly at 41 seconds. And we're gonna get to that soon. But before we reach that point, there is still some other things that we have to do. First of all, we have to place ourselves as far away from the dummy as possible. So I recommend you to try out before you start your runs to see, okay, in which spot that is the farthest away from the dummy can I stand and still hit it with my primary attack. So this is something that you should think about, and this is to optimize the effect of your bloody reach. After 7 seconds, I want you to summon your first mage. And when you summon your first mage, if everything has gone perfect so far, this will trigger the Vexed effect. And as you remember, this increases the attack speed of your summons. And if you trigger it at 7 seconds, it will be available again at 37 seconds. 30 seconds later. After 14 seconds, I want you to summon the second mage. And after 21 seconds, I want you to summon your third mage. When you summon your third mage, as I explained to you earlier, one of your skeletons will die. And when this happens, it will trigger the attack speed buff of your main hand. No rest, no peace. And this also counts as a buff that gives you and your summons bottled hope. So this will happen at 21 seconds exactly. And bottled hope also has a 20 seconds cooldown. So if we've done everything perfectly so far, it means that Shepherd, Mother's Lament, and Bottled Hope will be available at exactly 41 seconds. After 27 seconds, you summon your 4th mage, and this will once again trigger no rest, no peace. After 34 seconds, you will summon the 5th mage, and here you also summon your golem. This is good because if you remember, we triggered Vexed at 7 seconds, and it will not be available again until 37 seconds. So when it has not yet passed 30 seconds, so that's why we can summon the golem here without and another mage without triggering the Vexed effect. So at 39 seconds, I want you to activate your ultimate. The ultimate will be available for 12 seconds, and there's a little bit of an animation when you trigger it. So this means that when you start, you're gonna see what happens at 41 seconds, but then you will still have 10 seconds to go with your ultimate. Oh, here it says summon golem as well, but this is wrong. You should summon the golem at 34 seconds, not at 39 seconds. If we would summon the golem here, we would trigger the Vexed effect too early, and we don't want that. So, at 41 seconds, this is the magic. You have to do this really fast in order to optimize everything. So what you want to do is that exactly at 41 seconds, you're gonna summon your 6th mage. And immediately after that, you will summon the Bone Wall and use Command Skeleton and use Command Golem to apply the debuff on the target. When you summon the 6th mage, it has been more than 30 seconds ago since the Vexed effect went off. So this will trigger the Vexed effect. And what you need to do here is that you want to do this combination as fast as possible to get as good result as possible. So you summon the 6th mage, bam, Vexed is triggered. Now you have to summon Bone Wall, use Command Skeleton, and jump with your golem on the target as fast as you possibly can. And when you have done this, you trigger the offensive stance, and bam, then you reset the dummy timer. And if you have timed this perfectly, you will have triggered Vexed, Bottled Hope, Mother's Lament, and Shepherd's Burden at the same time, giving you a massive boost in damage. So this is with the optimal strategy to maximize the 10-second run. So yeah, if you're gonna do a 1 minute run, yeah, it's actually the same steps as before, but you don't have to worry about the ultimate, because then you're just gonna use Bone Spear. So you make sure to have defensive stance active, and then you just follow the same steps as here, but you don't have to think about the ultimate, and that's it. So it's a little bit easier to pull off. I also have to say that yeah, you can be a little bit unlucky, because there is a window here from 37 seconds to 41 seconds that you might summon a clone from Echoing Shade. And if this happens, it will trigger the Vexed effect too early as well. So you might have to try this a few times in order to get it perfect. And yeah, you maybe have to try it many times to get it as perfect as possible, because there's also some luck involved, like I just told you. But if you manage to pull this off after 41 seconds, you will just keep summoning mages whenever the cooldown is ready. You will summon Bone Wall whenever the cooldown is ready, and then you will apply the debuff on the target with your poison golem as every time when the debuff runs out. So you don't want to jump, you want the golem to hit, you don't want to jump too early with it. You have to look at the timer when the debuff is about to run out. So I think this is the optimal strategy that I've been coming up with using this build at least. So yes, this is everything for this video. And before you leave, of course, we're gonna look together at the gameplay when I do these 2 runs that I highlighted in the beginning. And yeah, I want to thank all of you for tuning into my channel again. Hopefully I will be able to upload my next videos fairly soon. But I'm very, very busy in real life now with a lot of work. So yeah, I have to prioritize that. I try to tell them that I am the high priest of Kuro, and I'm trying to break as a YouTuber, but they almost fired me. So I have to prioritize that over YouTube, of course. But I look forward to share with you more interesting builds in the future, and also, of course, talk more about PvP, because that's something I feel very strong about. But until then, thank you very much, and to all my members in the Kuro clan, I would just like to say Avrath, El Omno, Kuro. See you guys later. Bye bye.